I'm sitting here with Mr. Mincer,
Hi everyone.
Assistant Principal, and Madeline Sattler, Director of Communications.
Hi everyone.
And we are recording this live session. So if you know people who are not able to tune in live, you can encourage them to go to not only Aumsville's Facebook page, but our website, and they can access the video after the fact. We have had a lot of questions come in, and you have the option to do questions during this live feed, and we will respond to as many as we can. And I love that I'm getting people just saying hi. So I want to say I miss you guys. I can't wait for kids to come back. I know that comprehensive distance learning is not our first choice. I know it's not your first choice. But this is the situation in which we find ourselves. So we are going to make the best of it, and I hope that tonight's Q&A kind of alleviates some of the anxiety that we know is living out there. If you don't get your question answered tonight, please make sure that you reach out either through Facebook or email or call the school, and we will continue to get you as many answers as we possibly can. I'm going to start by just kind of defining comprehensive distance learning and the difference between that and our online option. Comprehensive distance learning has a whole series of guidance separate from what would happen if we were returning to in-person instruction. So comprehensive distance learning is a combination of virtual classroom, live instruction. Your kids are interacting with their teacher, your kids are interacting with their peers, and they are doing activities together, but they won't be online all day. And Madeline, I don't know if you can check this, but I'm watching myself do some skipping. So if this feed is coming through funky, I apologize. So your kid is doing some live instruction with their teacher, they're doing some independent activity, and then there's going to be small group, there's going to be peer-to-peer interaction. There will also be an opportunity for your kid to do one-on-one check-ins with either their teacher or maybe an instructional assistant, and there might be some live individual interventions happening. They will be put in a class list as if they were coming back on campus, and that teacher will be managing their comprehensive distance learning. The difference from that is our online program, and that is going to be for families who already know that they are going to do online learning all year. The difference between that comprehensive distance learning model and the online model, in the online model you will still have a cascade teacher, but that teacher is going to be responsible for managing all K-5 kids who are going to do online learning all year. And the requirements for online learning are more student-directed, self-directed, and maybe even self-paced, as opposed to teacher-directed and live interaction, two-way interaction between the teachers and the students. We are assuming that if you're registering, that you are going to do comprehensive distance learning and that your student would return as soon as it is safe and the state says we are able to return to live in-person instruction. Unless you get a hold of us and say, we've already decided that my child is going to be in online all year, that way they could stay with the teacher they start with. Both programs, online and comprehensive distance learning, will be delivering content that is identical, and it's content written to be delivered online. And we are using the platform called SchoolsPLP, and that platform will be a single sign-on, and so when your student signs in, everything that they need for their learning that day will be in their folder for that day. So you won't have to navigate in and out of programs. You can find everything they need right in their SchoolsPLP login. So that's the biggest difference. If you feel very strongly that your child is not going to return to us in person when we are told we can return safely, then just let us know that you want them enrolled in the online version. So in order to return safely, the state has to meet the metric of a 5% or less test positivity rate. Once the state reaches that, then the county has to reach a 5% or less testing positivity rate. When the 5% or less is met, we have to look at cases per 100,000. If we get to 30 cases per 100,000, because there is less risk of spread among young children, and because of the need for young children to get their foundational reading and math skills, the state says at 30 cases per 100,000, K3 can come back. If we get to 10 cases per 100,000, 4 or 5 can join us. There has been more spread among children ages 10 and up, and 4th and 5th graders don't need as much foundational skills work as K through 3. So that's the state's logic behind the different metrics for the different student groups. So that's the basic kind of broad stroke overview of the difference between comprehensive distance learning and full year online program. So now we're going to get to some questions, and I'm going to have Mr. Mincer read some questions that came in to us this week, and then Ms. Sattler will be watching the message board live. So here we go.
What are the expectations for students?
So during comprehensive distance learning, we ask that students engage each day. That might be them tuning into live instruction with their teacher and their entire class. It might be them logging in and engaging and completing some work. It might be them checking in with a small group, maybe with a special education teacher or an instructional assistant delivering a reading intervention. Or it might be them watching a video. If your student can't log in live, they can always log in after the fact and watch the video and still complete the assignments. While we're talking about that, parents had questions about, what if my child can't log in live? It doesn't work with our schedule. So whenever your family can fit in the schoolwork, teachers have a 24-hour window to log activity and engagement as attendance. So 24 hours. So if a parent is working and the student can't be online while the parent's at work, when the parent gets home and you're logging in at 5:30 to watch the video, that still counts as attendance for that day. There was a question also about the grace period to get work completed. And yes, teachers are going to be flexible about what that looks like to meet family needs. So the student expectation is engaging every day, 5 days a week, and completing some work.
What are the expectations for parents?
We are asking that parents consider creating a space in the home that is set aside for schoolwork. It's going to help the students to have a set schedule and a set place to do their work. And if you need supplies, we are not putting out a school supply list, but some basic supplies might be spiral notebooks, pencils, colored pencils, a computer. And if you need assistance with any of that, you can certainly get a hold of us and we can help with any of that. The other thing I'd like to offer is if it would be beneficial to your student to have a desk at your house so that they have a dedicated space to do schoolwork, please let us know because we can help you with that.
You kind of touched on this a little bit. What if my student can't make a live lesson? How will you take attendance?
So we will be taking attendance in a 24-hour period. So if the teacher goes live at 8:30, you have until 8:30 the following morning to log in and watch that day's instruction. So you may be marked as attending by engaging within that 24-hour window. If you know you can't log in during that 24-hour window, please make sure you get a hold of your student's teacher and let them know that your student will be marked absent for that day.
What is limited in-person instruction?
Great question. Limited in-person instruction refers to the possibility that small learning pods could come on campus for any type of instruction during comprehensive distance learning. That limited in-person instruction has some very specific boundaries. For example, it has to be cohorts of less than 10, and it is a 2-hour time limit, and students can't be in more than 2 cohorts a day, with transportation being 1 cohort. There also is going to be a set of criteria that determines who is eligible to come on campus when it is allowed. That criteria is being still determined by the state, and students who might qualify for in-person instruction include students on IEPs, students with 504s, students who have mental and behavioral health supports, students who had trouble engaging in the spring. All of those are things that would be considered criteria, and a team of people will determine not only who comes, but when they come and how often they come.
How will special ed services work, specifically speech? And what about IEPs and 504s?
So services will continue during comprehensive distance learning in a variety of ways. It could be video conferencing, it could be phone calls, audio conferencing. Speech in particular will be delivered through video conferencing. We are not using Zoom this year. We are moving to Google Meets, which operates very similar to Zoom, and SchoolsPLP will have its own engagement platform. So we will walk all parents through that. Let me say that any student who is on a 504 or an IEP, you will be contacted individually by your student's service provider to, number one, go over any accommodations that need to be made in the context of distance learning, but also then to set up what service schedules might look like.
Can I do packets instead of CDL?
There might be some printables on any given day. If a parent does not have printing capabilities at home, grade levels will be producing printables that will be available during our lunch pickup. We will be serving lunch in a drive-through option like we did last spring, and we would have printables ready for pickup if you don't have printing capabilities at home. There are going to be lots of options for completing work. Some of them are going to be teacher engagement with students. Some of them are going to be students working together in a shared format. And if parents really, really want students to have paper and pencil, printables will be the option for that.
How do I get a Chromebook or other technology if I need it? What about internet? What if I have multiple kids? Can I have multiple Chromebooks? Who can I reach out to?
All excellent questions. So the district is helping this year with technology in the form of Chromebooks and hotspots, and those are going to be evaluated on a needs basis. If you have not yet filled out our technology access survey, you can go to the Cascade website, and under COVID-19 resources is the technology access survey, and that is where you can address concerns about your internet connectivity as well as devices. Families can have more than one device with multiple students in the house. One of the things we have done at Aumsville is created a schedule where live instruction is staggered by grade level, so multiple students will not have to log on to the live instruction simultaneously. So if you have multiple students who are logging on, maybe for small group, while whole group is going on with another student, one of the things that I have heard is helpful is some headphones or earbuds to plug into the Chromebook. So if you can provide that for your student, that would be a helpful piece of technology, but we can provide the Chromebooks and the hotspots.
What are the childcare or daycare options available? Will the school district be providing this, and does this include latchkey?
This is an icky question. This part sucks. There is not a school based option for childcare. And I hate saying that out loud because I know there's not a ton out there in the community either. Latchkey will not be operating in our building, unfortunately. I have reached out to local churches to see if they could help with learning pods. I start to hear some chatter about learning pods out in the communities. Reach out to your neighbors and your friends about learning pods. Also, there are a lot of students who are signed up to do college that don't actually get to move into their college, and might be available to help with tutoring or online learning in a home-based situation. So the more I hear, I will continue to put information out, but start talking to friends and neighbors. It's gross. I don't like saying that out loud. I would love to be able to help, but right now we are not allowed to have students on campus.
What will a typical day look like for students, and what kind of supplies will I need to provide?
So we've touched on supplies a little bit. Basic supplies, spiral notebooks, pencils. We can provide some starter packets if you need them. Reach out to us. A typical day is going to involve, like I said, a 45-minute chunk of time, guaranteed live instruction with your student's teacher. There's going to be multiple opportunities throughout the day to log in for small group, for peer-to-peer interaction, maybe working with an instructional assistant on some type of an intervention or assessment. You can plan on about 2.5 hours of learning any given day, and that might include some independent practice and some live instruction. One of the things I'm super excited about that we're going to do this year also, that we were not offering in the spring, your academic work will be in the morning, and in the afternoon we will offer some elective type choices. Your student might log on with one of our PE teachers and do some activities. Maybe they log on their phone and they go out in the backyard. We're going to offer some music lessons. We're going to offer some art classes. We're going to offer book clubs. And all of those will be live options after 1:30, and they are optional, but they would be another way to fill your student's day with some engaging interaction.
This one's kind of long, so bear with me. If we do CDL first and then schools transition to in-person instruction, will there be an option to stay with my student's teacher in distance learning, or will we have to switch to online with a totally different program? I'd love to stay with the Aumsville teachers because we love you guys, but I just don't see returning my kids to in-person instruction this year.
Okay, so once we get the okay from the state to transition to live in-person instruction, teachers will be shifting away from comprehensive distance learning and will not be managing any online instruction. Online instruction would then shift to that teacher who is still a Cascade teacher and still delivering the same content that they had during comprehensive distance learning. But it will be one teacher managing all K-5 students in our online school, different from engaging with their classroom teacher in comprehensive distance learning. If you're not sure what you're going to feel like when we get the okay, I would recommend signing up for comprehensive distance learning and just staying there and then make the decision. If you already know because you have health concerns or you have high-risk people in your house, get a hold of us and we'll put you in the online version. You'll still have a Cascade teacher, you'll still have the same SchoolsPLP format, but that way you get to stay with the same teacher all year.
Will kids have the opportunity to meet with their teachers before they start online learning or distance learning?
Great question. Our teachers will be reaching out to their class lists, their people, by Friday the 28th. So you will either get a phone call or an invitation to a virtual home visit where you will get to meet the teacher and spend some one-on-one time. They get to know the student and the student gets to know their teacher. In the case of kindergarten, you will not only get to meet your teacher ahead of time with a virtual home visit, you will get a second invitation for a virtual appointment where they will do the kindergarten screeners virtually. We won't be doing the Oregon State Kinder Readiness Assessment. That requirement has been waived, but kindergarten will do their letters and sounds and shapes and numbers assessments virtually with one-on-one appointments. And I'm just going to repeat, I see that we have quite a few people that logged on that maybe didn't hear the beginning of this. I want to remind you that this is being recorded and you can access the video if you missed the beginning of this Q&A. Okay.
If our students need help because they are frustrated or not understanding, how can they get the support they need?
Love it. Your teacher will be available when after 1:30 when all live group, whole group and small group instruction is over. Your teacher will have office hours and will be accessible. You can email, you can call, you can video chat, but teachers will be accessible. You can set up standing appointments with teachers to receive one-on-one attention. If your child is on an IEP, they will also be getting some one-on-one instruction or small group instruction with special ed staff. And there was a second part to that. Did I hit all of it?
How can we help if they're frustrated or not understanding, and how can they get the support they need?
So you will have access to teachers. Parents, I want to reiterate for you to reach out too. I know that kids are different at home than they are at school, and kids will perform for teachers differently than how they will perform for you. And we are here to help, and we are willing to do whatever it takes. And if teacher is not available, one of Mr. Minzer, myself, Mrs. Cromwell, any of us can log on and help kids. We have counseling available, Mrs. Delamarter, Mr. Nelson, Miss Tracy the Brain Lady. All of these people will be available and accessible to your children for any type of help that they need.
How will teachers focus on engagement, buy-in, and creating classroom culture?
So we are doing 2 weeks of training. As you know, the first day of school got pushed back, and so we are going to spend a lot of time training not only how to use the platform, but we are intentionally training teachers how to create a classroom culture in a virtual situation. And there is going to be not only a variety of activities to peak engagement, but also a variety of ways to engage. The social emotional part that students missed out on last spring is heavy on our minds, and so we will be creating lots of opportunities for students to engage with their peers virtually, and then when we are allowed to, creating small groups that will be allowed on campus. We are hoping to have an answer for that limited in-person on campus by the end of September or early October.
Will there be training sessions for families and parents on how to use the online learning platform?
Absolutely, there will be trainings. We will hold a virtual open house prior to the first day of school, and then we will also be posting how-to videos in terms of navigating SchoolsPLP and navigating Google Meets, and then we will also be available for phone calls and questions at any time that you're having trouble.
If the opportunity arises for in-person school, how will the school prioritize pods of students for learning?
So I'm assuming that this question is referring to all students back on campus. And the way we wrote our Safe Schools, Ready Learners plan is that we would guarantee pods of 20 or less in any given learning space. I would like to focus right now on what comprehensive distance learning looks like. I've talked a little bit about limited in-person instruction and criteria for that, but we're going to hold more Q&A. So if it looks like cases are going down and the test positivity rate is going down, we'll start to hold Q&As about what returning to school will look like for kids.
You touched a little bit on this, but could you speak more about kindergarten assessments? What will the start of the year look like for kinders?
So kinders will start on September 8th, the same day as everybody else, but it might be a little bit less of academics and more of show us what you already know, and we're going to meet you and then take you forward from there. So, during the first week of school, there might be more one-on-one appointments so that we can do those letters and sounds and shape screeners. But you will hear from your classroom teacher, whether you are kinder or fifth grade. You will know by September 8th what the daily schedule looks like.
With the IEP process, if my student needs an IEP, what does that look like? How will we get that done in distance learning?
So we're going to spend quite a bit of time at the beginning of the school year getting to know kids and doing some assessments at the grade level. And then we can start talking about what intervention looks like for that student so that we can look at, normally, without COVID, we would do an intervention process with an SST process where the team is deciding that the child either needs to move towards evaluation or not. We will continue to run that process, but it's going to involve way more one-on-one time for your student in a virtual format with some individualized instruction to see if they are going to respond to that intervention.
How can we as parents support school administrators and teachers?
I love that question. Grace and flexibility are something that we are spending a ton of time talking about, and I would just ask for support in that way as a two-way street. Grace and flexibility in the fact that this is not our first choice for your students, and we've never done this before. We are spending a lot of time trying to do it well, and then also just reaching out if you need help, parents. That is a way to let us know that you are ready to support your kids and we are ready to help you, and then creating that safe space for them to learn at home.
We've got a lot of questions in the chat. Some of them you answered earlier, but I think maybe if you want to touch on a couple things.
Okay.
One of the big questions was, again, the live instruction. Are kids expected to be there live? Do they have to be with their teacher every day, or how can that work for working parents?
Okay, so students have 24 hours in which to log in and be counted as attending for that day. the Department of Education is requiring that we take daily attendance, and we are going to measure attendance by kids logging in and engaging with the content. So if you can't be live during the day, then live in the evening means that you're accessing the video of the live instruction that was delivered earlier in the day. You can watch the video, you can complete some work, and that counts as attendance. I had one parent ask, if I am working with my littler kids in the evening when I get home, can my older kid log in at 6 a.m. the next morning? And the answer is yes. You have a 24-hour period from when that instruction was live to connect with that content and still be counted as attendance for the day. Super flexible. And your teacher will reach out and see what works for you as a family.
What will the access be for teachers for students enrolled in online only?
So online only is going to be delivered by a Cascade teacher, depending on the numbers that we have. Right now we have one staff member ready to do the online instruction, and that teacher will be engaging on a daily basis as if they were your classroom teacher. That teacher will be available for whole group, that teacher will be available for small group, that teacher will be available, but you have to remember she's managing K-5. So she will have to, and I say she just because the bulk of elementary teachers are female, but that teacher will have to be available for individual help, small group help, office hours, phone calls, email. It will all be available just like comprehensive distance learning. The difference is that teacher will be managing K-5 all year long.
Will live sessions be muted? Sometimes with kids, there's lots of chatter even in a Zoom meeting. So what will that be like? Will it just be the teacher talking?
That's a great question, and I honestly don't know the answer to that. I think if we want kids to be able to engage socially, some of it is going to have to be everybody's mic is on. But I think when instruction is being delivered, we can absolutely have it muted so that it is just the teacher delivering instruction. But I think that once the teachers get super familiar with the platform, that will be easily answered.
And that's also something we're going to talk about this coming week with our professional development, how to manage your virtual classroom, not just build culture and create buy-in, but also how to manage kids in that setting.
Cool. Will TAG students have a plan for enrichment and leveling up?
Yes, the beautiful thing about SchoolsPLP is that it's going to be fairly adaptable for individualizing. So students who are ahead and accelerated and want to move at a pace of enrichment will have that opportunity. Teachers can build in those lessons and those extensions for kids. And on the other end of that, kids who are struggling to understand the concept and might need a review, some of their independent work can be put in their folder at a review level. So that was one of the reasons we chose this program, is because it's extremely flexible and can be individualized. And one of the things I would like to just shout out to the Aumsville teachers is that they're really good at individualizing. And so even during the spring, the packets were built to kind of be universal, and this is going to be so much different, and kids are going to get what they need in this program.
Is it easy to switch from comprehensive distance learning to online if we don't feel comfortable going to school, if we don't like how the in-person school is managing? And what is it like to switch from online to CDL if online isn't working for us?
So they're going to look so similar to start with. The content is going to be the same. The pacing will probably be extremely similar. We are going to evaluate the metrics and look at a transition. I think the reason October 18th was floating around out there is because that's when we're going to reevaluate to see if we can get back to in-person learning. And the switching back and forth will be fairly easy. The content that's being delivered is going to match really well with the content that will be back to in-person. And online and comprehensive distance learning is the same platform. It's SchoolsPLP. It's the same grade level content. It's driven by the standards. It's going to be reported on the same report card. So it's going to look very similar. If after we evaluate the metrics, and if there is a transition to in-person learning, and if you want to make a switch, we're going to ask that people either switch altogether during that evaluation time mid-October, or if you don't make the switch when the big transition is happening, you can always make the switch at the end of the trimester, at the end of the grading period.
This question came from Amanda. I know Cascade District is part of Marion County, but because we are a smaller district, is there any chance we can go to in-person instruction before Marion County as a whole goes to in-person instruction?
The only exemption that we have as a rural district is we qualify for that K3 early option if we get to 30 cases per 100,000. But Marion County as a whole has to get to 10 cases per 100,000 before we can universally open up the school. So whatever the county does, even though we are rural, we still have to follow the county metrics with the exemption of the K3.
Are there plans for extra hand washing, classroom and common area sanitation, and health screenings if and when students get to return to in-person school?
Absolutely. We have written a pretty extensive plan for infection control, infection spread, outbreak scenarios, and those are things that we will start preparing videos What will it look like when you come into school? What will it look like when you're transitioning out of your classroom or into your classroom? What will recess look like? What will lunch look like? Those are all things that we're going to start producing videos of and putting information out there during comprehensive distance learning as we prepare for returning to school.
Is it possible for students to use a tablet or a phone for their learning if they don't have a computer?
I think a tablet would work really well. I think it would be really hard on a phone just because of the size of the content. But I also know that children are digital natives, and what's harder for me on a phone may not be harder for them. If you have a tablet, I would say plan on that working. If all you have is a phone, I would say reach out to us and see about a Chromebook.
Could you reiterate too, you talked a little bit about the Chromebook checkout. What were the dates for that one more time?
We hope to have Chromebooks ready for checkout by the week of August 31st to September 2nd. You will be hearing from somebody from our school before that to set up an appointment to check out a Chromebook.
When will we find out who our kids' teachers are?
The teachers will be getting a hold of you. So you will find out who your teacher is before next Friday or by the end of the day next Friday. We have built in some time to their week next week so that they can reach out to you and say, hey, I am your teacher, let me get to know your kid, and they will be reaching out to you.
Will there be free lunches?
That is a great question. We are waiting to hear back from the state. When we closed schools back in March, the state waived the lunch requirement and every student had free lunch. As of right now, the state has not waived that requirement. So students who are on free and reduced lunch for a school year would still receive their free and reduced lunch. Students who do not receive free and reduced lunch could still come and pick up lunch. We would just have to charge their mealtime account. However, the state is still deciding on free lunch for everyone.
Cool. That looks like all the questions that have come through. Lots of comments, lots of chatter, but I think that's all we've got for right now. And if you have other ones, reach out.
Okay. I had a show and tell and my video isn't working. So I am going to say, Aumsville Panthers, we love you, we miss you, and we can't wait to see you even if it's online. And we'll probably do another live video the closer we get to the start of school, just to share some exciting things that are going to happen.